Hello, good morning, and welcome to this YouTube Live. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm assuming most people will be watching the replay, so welcome if you're watching the replay. And today's topic, which has been a bit of a theme if you follow me on other social media channels this week, is about the shadow. So I'm looking today at, is your voice limiting your success? And would you like to find greater clarity, greater freedom, more dynamics, more expression? Maybe you want to sound more authoritative or assertive. Have you tried to create change? Maybe you've watched some of my videos or other people's videos. Maybe you've been to some workshops or you've had a couple of voice lessons. Even some people that contact me have worked with speech therapists. So, have you tried to create change? And maybe you are hitting a wall. Maybe you just feel like you're doing all the right stuff, you're doing it right, but you're not really seeing any change. You're not really seeing any real movement. And you feel like you're either sort of hitting a wall, reaching a plateau, or worse, actually just going back to what you were doing before. And also, part of this too is maybe you just find it hard to maintain a vocal practice. Maybe you find it hard to actually just show up every day and do a little practice. So, what's going on here? And that's the theme of today's video. Because everything that you are experiencing with your voice, everything that you perceive with your voice is on some level what you want. And what you say you want is actually in your shadow. So everything you currently have is on some level what you want. And everything that you say you want, but you don't have, is in your shadow. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today, because it is absolutely essential. And actually, you can apply this to anything in your life, not just your voice. If there's anything in your life that you say you want, but you don't have, more money, better relationships, better job, fill in the blank. If you don't have it and you're taking action to try and create it, then it's because it's in your shadow. And so if you don't do the shadow work, you are always going to be limited. You are always going to be limited by what you can create in your life more broadly. But specifically from my perspective, you're going to be limited by what you can actually create with your voice and actually access your true voice, reclaim your true voice. You are always going to be limited by the persona. So I'm going to talk more about this today because some of these terms might be new to you. So I'm going to try and keep it as simple as possible, but it is quite a complex topic and there's many nuances. And of course, this is going to look different for different people, but I will try and keep it general and as simple as I possibly can. So before I get started on the video, my name is Anuska Taylor, for those of you who don't know me, and I'm an executive voice coach. And I'm also a Jungian life coach, which is where all of this shadow persona work comes in, because this is really the work of Carl Jung, the Swiss psychologist. So I use this psychology in my coaching within a coaching model. So none of my work is from a clinical model, whether that's working with people with their voice or working with this emotional patterns and shadow patterns. It's all from a coaching perspective, meaning it's all about helping you go from ordinary to extraordinary. It's really about creating versus looking back and trying to make you feel a little bit better. This is about helping you really drive your life and your voice forward. So I have been working on my own voice, training, coaching, and learning all about the voice for more than 15 years now. I've worked with clients around the world. And as I say, I've been working on my own voice, oh my goodness, for a long time. And a lot of my training in the early days was very much focused on technique and physiology and how the voice works. And these are the exercises we do to get this result or that result. And it was all incredibly helpful. So I'm really grateful to have had that background in training and knowing what specific exercises are going to create certain changes in the voice. However, what I came to realize in my own voice, but also with working with hundreds of clients around the world, is if you only work on the vocal exercises, you are never going to really create change. You will always hit a barrier. You will always hit a plateau. I had it in my own voice. I've seen it with clients, because ultimately the voice is an emotional instrument, and it's expressing what you really feel and think about yourself. So most of our thoughts are unconscious. I think you probably are aware of that. So when you're trying to create change with your voice from what you're conscious of, it's incredibly limiting. It's like 5% of your thoughts. So what's in the unconscious is really what's going to create change in your voice, in your life. And this is really what really differentiates me from other voice coaches, from other public speaking coaches, that I not only bring the technical and functional aspects of voice, but I'm also going much deeper, without this being therapy, without, you having to go through therapy, because I think what we're talking about here, everyone experiences, every single human being experiences this. So this isn't because you're broken or you need to be fixed or there's something wrong with you. This is just being a normal human being, including myself, including everyone in my life that I know. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So first of all, I just want to talk a little bit about what shadow work is. Again, as I mentioned, this is a Jungian concept. It's talked a lot more out there now in the world, but I don't know whether people realize its roots really in Jungian psychology. And so sometimes it can be kind of overly simplified and misunderstood. So I just want to kind of give you a little bit of an understanding. So shadow work is really examining yourself, parts of yourself that you've suppressed, denied, or ignored. And the reason we do this is because they don't fit with this persona, with this mask, with this image we want to show to the world. And these are Jungian concepts, the persona, shadow, they kind of go hand in hand. And the ego, our ego, which is not a personality trait, is what is the kind of, it decides, it's like, it's bringing the representative to the table. So our ego is what really decides what we show to the world. And so this persona is going to vary. It's very adaptive. It shapeshifts depending on the situation we're in. But it's really about what is going to help me survive in this particular situation. So you will show up differently in a business meeting versus if you're having dinner with friends, versus if you're talking to your pets or you're playing with your kids. You are going to bring a different representative to the table, meaning a different persona you're going to bring to the table. However, we're talking here, this is superficial changes, but fundamentally we bring the same persona to the table. So whatever doesn't fit with this persona, whatever we've decided, this is not safe to show. So I've created this persona. This is the image that makes me feel safe. And whatever we have decided goes into the shadow. And it's really designed to hide parts of ourselves. I mean, that's the whole purpose of this. The persona is, I need to find a way of fitting in, of just functioning in the world, but I also want to be able to hide my vulnerabilities and my fears and my insecurities. And so that's what the persona is for. And that's why it kind of shapeshifts depending on the situation that you're in. So just to give you a very, very basic example, and again, this is very complex, so I am sort of butchering the simplicity of this a little bit, but just to give you an idea. So if you identify with being a very friendly, generous, kind person, I mean, we all want to be friendly, generous, and kind, don't we? So if you identify with that as being who you are, then the opposite of that goes into your shadow. Meaning unfriendly, selfish, mean, you're going to reject that into your shadow. And the thing with the ego is it doesn't just reject that at the very extreme level, it will reject anything that could vaguely be perceived as mean, as unfriendly, as selfish. So it could be putting boundaries down with someone. It could be having an uncomfortable conversation with someone. It could be telling someone no. It could be saying, I don't want to be in this relationship anymore, or having a difficult conversation with a client. So it doesn't have to be you're doing something really extreme and really, criminal or illegal. It could just be something that's very uncomfortable to you, and this is going to vary from person to person, because what I perceive as mean, you might not perceive as mean. What I perceive to be selfish, you might not perceive to be selfish. So it's very much down to the perception of the individual. The issue with this comes when we overly identify with the persona as who we are. So I overly identify with being this kind person. I am then going to be incredibly limited by what I allow myself to show in the world. So I'm going to give you just a quick example as it pertains to the voice, because the voice is part of this persona. The voice is part of this image we show to the world. It absolutely is essential. We our voice changes. And, again, much like the persona, it will adapt, it will shapeshift depending on the situation we're in. But fundamentally, the function of the voice is going to be the same, but we might sort of tweak it slightly depending on, where we are, who we're around. So just to give you a quick example, I work with a lot of women, and for a lot of us as women, we are taught that it's not okay to be confrontational. You're not okay. It's not okay to be authoritative and powerful. And so you've got to be this kind of easygoing, gentle, sweet-natured woman. That's very much part of the persona of being a woman, the persona of being mothering and nurturing. You've just got to keep the peace, keep everyone happy. I hear this a lot from people, not wanting to rock the boat, not wanting to upset people. And so then you're really denying that more authoritative, powerful, confrontational part of yourself. And that goes into the shadow. Now, how that affects the voice is you are going to have a very, very hard time allowing yourself to be assertive and to be authoritative when you speak. And I see this a lot with clients. So I will give them specific exercises that I know will build strength in the voice. And they have a real hard time allowing themselves to go there. So what will happen is they will either sort of dip their toe in and they'll do it a little bit, but they're not really fully engaged in it. They're sort of holding back. So they're not fully in the process, or they just make excuses why they haven't practiced. Now's not the right time. I haven't had time. But really, when you peel the layers back, it's because there's a real fear unconsciously of going towards this more authoritative, powerful voice, because it doesn't fit with the persona. The persona I've created is I've got to be a people pleaser. I need everyone to like me. I can't make waves. I can't upset people. And how many of us have heard that as women? And so, and men as well, but I think it's very predominant for women in particular. So if we are rejecting that, that is going to absolutely influence what's possible with your voice. Just on that as well, so part of that as well is often when we are rejecting all of this kind of power and authority. One of the things that's also in our shadow is a lot of anger and resentment, because actually when we tap into that sort of anger, which is really unexpressed passion, that has a profound impact on our voice as well. And again, sometimes I will say to clients, I just want you to say this with a little bit of anger. And that is a real trigger for a lot of women in particular. No, I don't want to be angry. I don't want people to think I'm angry. I'm like, you're not going to sound angry. It's just going to bring more passion and energy to your voice. But again, if we reject this, if our persona is I've got to be sweet, nice, and keep everyone happy, we are not going to allow that into our voice. And I have seen this time and time again. It doesn't matter what career someone is in, you can have this persona and really reject this. So I hope you're starting to see how limiting this is for the voice, but also just more broadly in your life, what you allow to come into your life, the conversations you allow yourself to have, and really showing up more fully and in your power. So what's really important to understand as well with the shadow, because it has got a sort of negative title. It's not a kind of unfortunate name, really, the shadow, because it sounds sort of a bit scary. But actually, the shadow is just as much about our gifts and our talents and our divine essence as it is our so called perceived negative qualities. So you could have all your sort of creative, intuitive, divine gifts in your shadow. And that was certainly the case for me for a long time. Um, I pushed away songwriting, and that was in my shadow for a long time. I really rejected it. No, I'm not a songwriter. That's not me. And the thing with the shadow is, as I say, it's not just positive, it's not just negative things, it's also positive things. So I would always admire people that were songwriters. I would be like, oh, I wish I could write a song. And I could. I just had never allowed myself to even try because it just been so pushed into my shadow. So it's not just negative qualities, because there's no such thing as a negative quality, because we need to be angry. We need to allow anger, for example, using that as the example, because that was another one for me, like pushing anger away. But when you push anger away, you push passion away, you really push all of that creative energy away. So it's not just about, I think when we think about anger, we think about, wars and conflicts and cruelty and all the horrible things we see in the world. But that's just suppressed anger. That's just suppressed rage. That isn't anger, really. What I'm talking about here is allowing yourself to feel this, because it's actually a very healthy emotion to feel and to express. It's just when we don't allow ourselves to feel it and to express it, it's like the pressure cooker with the lid on. It builds and builds and builds and builds and builds, and then explodes into wars and conflicts and violence and domestic abuse and all the horrible things we see in the world. But actually, if we just allow ourselves to feel it, we can move through it. And then we're not rejecting it and pushing it away in our voice and everything that comes with anger. Because actually, something sort of physiologically happens in the voice when we allow ourselves to access anger. Something really shifts, our energy shifts. The other thing I just want to mention as well, which is really important with this, because you probably have heard now about shadow work. It's a bit more mainstream. I mean, there was an article in the Guardian newspaper last week about it, which shocked me. Um, is sometimes it can be sort of synonymous with limiting beliefs. We hear a lot in the personal development world, work on your limiting beliefs and then your life will be sorted, and you just need to uncover your limiting beliefs. It's not limiting beliefs. Shadow work is not limiting beliefs. Shadow work is unconscious. And by definition, limiting beliefs are actually easily accessible. They're more in the pre-conscious. So I know what my limiting beliefs are. Very easily, I can tell you. I think most people would be able to tell you, I've got a limiting belief around how much money I can earn. I've got a limiting belief around the kind of relationship I could attract. I've got a limiting belief around what's possible with my health or what's possible in my career. So we can access that really easily, particularly if we sort of are asked quite specific questions. That is not shadow work. Because what you will find with shadow work is it's something that you completely deny in yourself. It's like, no, that is not me. That has got nothing to do with me. That is just in my husband, my wife, my child, my dog, my boss, nothing to do with me. So the more you deny it, the more you know it's you, a part of you, a part of you. It's not necessarily a direct reflection, but there's something in it. And just using the example of anger, because I think it's so common in my work and in myself, I had to do a lot of integration around this. When we repress anger and we deny it in ourselves, we will just notice it in the world. Conflicts, not only just more broadly in the world, like we're seeing at the moment, it just seems like the whole world is at war with each other, but also in our own life, we will see angry people showing up at work or at home or in the supermarket or road rage or whatever, and we will see it projected out there. But really, we're seeing ourselves, a part of ourselves. And so I used to be that person. I would see angry people. I used to attract angry people all the time, angry men into my life, angry bosses. I remember working somewhere and this guy that I was working with just swear all the time at people, really like angry man. And I used to think, why do I attract these angry people? Like, I'm not angry. And I used to be really confused by it. But what I didn't realize, it was because it was so suppressed in me, I didn't even recognize it. And it was really holding me back. It was holding me back with my voice, my speaking voice, particularly. It was holding me back in terms of me standing up for myself, putting boundaries down with people, expressing what I wanted, what I needed, what I felt. It was holding me back because my fear was so strong in that I don't want to be perceived as angry. And so anger could be, feeling a bit frustrated. It's not, there's layers of anger. It's not just full blown, I'm going to punch you in the face anger. It could be frustration. It could be resentment. That is all parts of anger. So it's really becoming very, very aware. But this is my point really with shadow work. It's the more you deny it, the more you know it's in your shadow, actually. And whether you deny it from a place of, like me as well with songwriting, no, I'm not a songwriter. That's just not who I am. So that was a kind of a talent of mine that I'd hidden. And, that's not me. Or whether it was the anger that I was suppressing. No, that's not me. I used to watch Gordon Ramsay on TV because I used to love, I still do, cooking shows. And I used to get really triggered by how rude he was to people. How can he swear at people like this? How can he be so rude? So it shows up in so many ways. But if it's a pattern and it's triggering you, it could be a mild frustration or resentment, or it could be like a real, this really annoys me. And there's a lot of criticism and judgment and blame behind it. It's your shadow. And this is the challenge with shadow work because we just cannot see it. So the ego's favorite tool for dealing with this, for pushing it away, is projection. It has some other tools as well. I mean, there's quite a few. I'll give you a couple of examples. Minimization, just sort of minimizing something. Oh, that's not really that much of an issue. Completely being in denial is another ego tool, like pretending something is not happening. There's just a couple of examples, but I think projection is probably the one that's easiest for you to see in your own life. So just start to notice in your world around you, who do I criticize? Who do I judge? Who do I blame? Is there a person or a group of people or a situation that you feel like a victim to? You know that it's pointing to your shadow. Or do you put people on a pedestal? Do you idolize certain people? Like I used to think, wow, songwriters, do you put certain people on a pedestal and think, I could never be that, I could never do that, that's so amazing? Again, it's pointing to something within your own divine self, your own gifts and talents that you're suppressing. Now, obviously, we've talked about this sort of briefly with the voice, but this is huge for the voice. Because when we're training our voice at the persona level and we're not doing the shadow work, we're not allowing ourselves to become whole, we're just working on sort of 50% of ourselves, we're cutting off half our vocal power. And as I said, if we are, for example, putting anger in the shadow, we are cutting off half of our passion, our energy, our authority in our voice. We're not going to allow ourselves to go there. Or we're going to allow ourselves to go there briefly, but then feel really, really guilty and run back. But we're not going to fully allow ourselves to kind of embrace that. So we end up then really sort of micromanaging our voice, very overly concerned with how we're perceived. I don't want to sound too much. I don't want to sound too this. I don't want to sound not enough. We're sort of like dancing around, trying to kind of micromanage everything that we say and how we say it. And it is exhausting because you're actually spending a lot of energy, psychological energy, pushing your shadow away and trying to maintain this persona of whatever your persona is. I'm an amazing, lovely, gentle, easygoing person, and I cannot be ever, ever, ever perceived in any other way. So it takes a lot of energy. The other thing as well, so just to remind you as well, your current vocal habits are really what your ego has decided are safe and acceptable for you to show in the world. So if you, for example, struggle to be find clarity in your voice, that you struggle to find that sort of ease and that clarity in your voice, what you're rejecting then is clarity. So let's say you mumble a lot, and that's quite common as well with people. So let's say you mumble, then you're really rejecting clarity. So again, this is how it starts to sort of limit the voice. but mumbling in some way is keeping you safe. And that's what you've got to look at. And the obvious one, and I've said this many times before, is when we mumble, we can't really be heard. So that's what you've got to start to look at, and what's really underneath that. And it's not, again, going to be obvious because it's going to be unconscious in the shadow. So when we start to integrate the shadow, and this is the point of this work, we're not pushing anything away. We are actually reclaiming everything. We're actually saying, I'm okay if I'm sometimes perceived as angry, authoritative, powerful, loud, fill in the blank. I'm okay with that. I can bring in whatever I want depending on the situation that I'm in, and I'm not going to be micromanaging my voice trying to be accepted. Then we're really truly free to access our true voice, because that's actually where our authentic voice is. Our authentic voice is actually truly free. The other aspect of this, when we're pushing our shadow away, not only is it limiting our voice, but it's also, as I said, limiting our creativity. So you may be in a job that you know in your heart isn't the job for you, but actually what you really want to do is in your shadow, so you're not going to go there. Or you could be in the right job. You could be doing something you love, but you know you're holding yourself back from really going to the next level. And a big one for a lot of people I see with this is the fear of public speaking. So they're in a job, they're doing really well, but they know to go to the next level, they've actually got to embrace public speaking and start speaking at bigger events, bigger stages, in front of bigger audiences, because it's just a part of having a business or a career. So again, whatever you say you want, but you don't have, is in your shadow. So there's something about, if you feel limited in your career, if you feel limited with your voice, you know that whatever is limiting you is really in your shadow. So what I'm going to suggest that you do is, presumably you're watching this because you feel limited by your voice in some way. If you don't feel limited by your voice, great. You don't need to listen to any of this. But if you feel limited by your voice, whether it's power, expression, clarity, dynamics, fill in the blank, start to look at your vocal habits and just start to pay attention to how you perceive your vocal habits. And one of the questions to ask yourself is, what am I rejecting by upholding the persona of my current vocal habit? So let's say you do mumble. What are you rejecting to uphold this persona of mumbling? I'm rejecting clarity. I'm rejecting precision. I'm rejecting having a voice that's really heard. I'm rejecting taking up space. That's where you've got to go. And so, how is that keeping you safe? By avoiding that. And that's where we start to peel back the layers of the proverbial onion to start to see, what is this really about? And again, it's not limiting beliefs. So it will be something that, triggers you quite a bit, will be underneath this. Just a common example I see around expression, for example, is for a lot of people, they have a real fear of being in the limelight. I hear this a lot, particularly with speakers, because they associate it with actors and singers and dancers. And when we reject the limelight, when we reject being full of ourselves and being in the limelight, we're really rejecting all of that expression and that dynamics and that power in our voice. And so people that really put that sort of in the limelight in their shadow really have a hard time allowing their voice to come out, allowing that true expression. So the goal with this work is integration. The goal is we bring everything together so you become a whole person. So you're not cutting off half of your power. You're not just living on the surface of this persona that you've created. You're actually integrating the whole self. That is when you are authentic, and that is when your voice can really be free to openly express itself. Because otherwise, you are always at war with yourself, micromanaging your voice. So this is hard to do by yourself for the reasons I've already explained, because what it's really about, you will absolutely reject has got anything to do with. And that's the hardest thing, because it takes a lot of courage to do this. I remember when I first started working with my coach on this, and I was working with a couple, and they were like, you've got a lot of anger in your shadow. I was like, no, I don't. I'm not angry. And when I really started to embrace that and actually integrate that, it had such a profound impact on my voice, how I showed up, how I express myself. So we're not making anything wrong. We're just integrating everything. And then you have access to everything. But the ego will make things right, wrong, good, bad, black, white, up, down. So you know when there's judgment, you know the ego is involved. The other point before I go, I just want to make as well, doing the shadow work is really important, but you still have to do the vocal exercises. We're still a physical instrument. We're still training muscles. We still need to release muscles, but we still need to strengthen muscles and create more stamina and agility and freedom in the voice. So it's not that you just sit on the couch and do your shadow work. You still have to do the vocal exercises. Much like if you're trying to lose weight, you still want to go to the gym and eat healthy, but you've still got to do the inner work, because ultimately it's an inner reason. It's an emotional reason why we struggle with everything. So you have to do the inner work, but you also have to do the physical vocal exercises as well. So if this has resonated with you, if you are like, yeah, I really get this on some level, and I would love some help with this because it's incredibly difficult to do by yourself. And I've spent the last 7 years working with a couple of amazing coaches on this within my own life. Then, and I'm not saying it has to take 7 years, by the way. That was only partly because I was doing all my training at the same time as well. But I was also going through the process myself. So if you are interested in understanding more about your voice and what it's reflecting and what you're pushing away, and starting to kind of peel back the layers of the onion in a non-therapy way, meaning you're not broken, there's nothing wrong with you don't need to be healed, you don't need to be fixed. This is just a normal, healthy human psyche, and we're just helping you get out of your own way. Then I would love to work with you. And I'm really now honestly wanting to just support people that are ready to go deeper. If you want to just have the surface exercises, you can get those from many vocal coaches, and you can get them off the internet, you can get them from Google, you can get them off YouTube videos. But if you want something much, much deeper, where you really want someone that's skilled in guiding you in that way and combining it with the vocal exercises, that's where I can help. And it comes at a cost, not only a financial cost, but also a commitment to do this inner work, because it does take courage. But I am here for you if you are ready for that journey to transform your voice and your life. So you can schedule a 30-minute voice discovery strategy call, and I'll put the links below. And this is really for us to explore your voice, what's going on, what I'm hearing, what you may or may not be perceiving, and how that is reflecting your shadow and what you're pushing away. So that's a 30-minute strategy call. But if you want a longer coaching call and actually a proper coaching session where we do it's more practical as well, then you can book the 60-minute reclaim your voice session. So there's a difference in investment because they're quite different calls, but it depends on what you want. So I would love to help you if you're ready to go deeper and do this deeper work. And if you have any questions also, please feel free to post them below or get in contact with me. You can send me a message through my website, anuska-taylor.com. So thank you so much, and I hope you have a lovely weekend. Take care. I'm just going to try and close this down. Thank you so much. Take care.